So my name is Mark Rogerson, and I'm spokesperson for the European Court of Auditors.
Which are the main issues today about the accountability in EU finances?
We have a number of proposals to make to manage EU finances better for the future. And the first one is we think people should be able to see much more clearly where there is what we call EU added value. If the EU has spent this money, this 100 million euros, for example, has it done a better job than if the member states had just kept the money and spent it for themselves? Because clearly, if they could do it just as well, it begs the whole question of, well, why have the EU doing it? But there are areas, and the environment is one, transport is another, where quite clearly these are cross-border things. The weather does not stop at the border. Therefore, spending on these things sensibly should be done collectively, but by spending it collectively, are we delivering more value than if we just left it to the individual member states? The second thing is, we like to see the budget being more flexible. When something unexpected comes along, like a banking crisis, or the huge increase in migration that we've seen in recent years, largely as a result of war and civil unrest, or changes in the climate, needing more money to be spent on perhaps action against flooding or desertification. When these unexpected requirements come along, it's quite difficult for the EU budget to respond quickly. The next thing is the whole thing needs to be simpler. Simplification from top to bottom. And to individual projects, if you talk to a farmer or a researcher who's wanted to get money for his farm or his project, they will tell you it's often incredibly complicated. And I know stories of people who simply decided it's too complicated, I'm not going to bother. And then the last thing on our shopping list, if you like, for the next EU budget is transparency and accountability.
And how can it be more transparent?
Well, transparency takes us into a couple of areas. I think the first thing is simplifying things automatically should make them more transparent. We're talking about loans and loan guarantees rather than just straightforward grants. And it becomes very difficult to see where exactly is the money going, where exactly did it come from. We think there have to be much clearer guidelines in that whole area. If you look at the EU budget as a whole, it's getting better. Honestly, it is. Over the last 3 years, the number of mistakes has been falling steadily. And in large areas, the level of error is now below the threshold where it becomes more expensive to try and get the money back rather than to say, well, okay, fine, we can live with that. It's 2%, 98% of your spending right. Then, okay, it's always nice to get to 100, but sometimes we live in the real world, people make mistakes.